10:46 p.m. on January 2nd, Caracas went dark. But this wasn't just another power failure in a struggling nation. This was the digital execution order for Operation Absolute Resolve. Within seconds, U.S. Cyber Command didn't just cut the lights, they blinded an entire military, turning the Russian radars into useless static. Low observable Night Stalker helicopters were already weaving through the mountains. On board, the most elite operators in the world, Delta Force and SEAL Team 6. Their destination, the Miraflores Palace. By the time the Presidential Guard realized they weren't alone, flashbangs were already detonating in the hallways. In less than 30 minutes of tactical chaos, the target was secured. Nicolás Maduro and his wife Celia Flores were no longer the leaders of a nation. They were high-value detainees in a zip-tie restraint. By dawn, they were gone, flown low over the Caribbean coast under the protection of F-35s, and onto the deck of the USS Gerald R. Ford. The man who had defied Washington for years had been extracted from his own fortress in less time than it takes to order a pizza. But how did we get here? And what does the U.S. really want from Venezuela? We're breaking down Operation Absolute Resolve, the operation that might have changed geopolitics forever. Before we get into Operation Absolute Resolve, let me introduce to you Supremacy World War III. It's a military-themed strategy game set in the late 20th and 21st century. The game involves a real-time combat system. In this game, the war never stops. You'll engage in real-time tactical combat that lasts for weeks, giving you plenty of time to plan your next big move. Whether you're at home or on the move, you can jump into the action anytime thanks to cross-platform support for both desktop and mobile apps. You'll have access to over 100 modern weapon systems, tanks, submarines, and jets. You'll also manage a resource-driven economy and team up with others through player alliances to take down your rivals together. Play Supremacy World War III for free on PC, iOS, or Android. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen to receive a unique starter pack with a free seasonal unit, the Elite Railgun, and a value of $40, available only for the next 30 days. And now let's get back to Maduro. For months, U.S. spies had been monitoring Maduro's every move. A small team, including one source within the Venezuelan government, had been observing where he slept, what he ate, what he wore, and everything that has to do with his regular schedule. Then, in early December 2025, a planned mission dubbed Operation Absolute Resolve was finalized. It was the result of months of meticulous planning and rehearsals, which even included elite U.S. troops creating an exact full-size replica of Maduro's Caracas safehouse to practice their entry routes. The plan was closely guarded. Even Congress wasn't informed ahead of time.
Congress has a tendency to leak. This would not be good. Congress will leak, and we don't want to leak.
The order from the president to begin the mission finally came at 10:46 p.m. Eastern on January 2nd. Trump's order came shortly before midnight in Caracas, giving the military most of the night to operate in darkness. Trump didn't follow the mission from the White House Situation Room. Instead, he was surrounded by his advisors at his Mar-a-Lago club in Palm Beach, Florida. What followed was a 2-hour and 20-minute mission by air, land, and sea. And this is how it all went down in a nutshell. At exactly 10:46 p.m. on January 2nd, the heart of Venezuela didn't just stop beating. It vanished from the digital world. It began with a silent strike from the U.S. Cyber Command, a digital ghost in the machine that seized the Guri Dam's control systems, which damaged the country's fiber optic spine in a single surgical stroke. This wasn't merely a blackout. It was a total sensory deprivation of a state. As the lights flickered out, the cellular networks of MobileNet and Digitel went dead, leaving the regime's high command screaming into silent radios. High above the Caribbean, EA-18G growlers flooded the sky with electronic noise, drowning out the Russian-made S-300 and Book M2 radar systems until their screens were static. The most sophisticated defense network in South America was rendered blind and paralyzed, leaving the gates of Caracas wide open for tactical teams to strike. At 11:12 p.m., the Night Stalkers crossed the coastline. Flying in total darkness, 6 Black Hawks and 4 massive Chinooks, They flew at low altitudes, less than 50 feet above the trees, using silent night radar to weave through the peaks. By 11:28 p.m., the force split in two. Task Force Red banked toward the Miraflores Palace to launch a diversion, drawing the elite presidential guard into a firefight in the North Gardens. But the real mission, Task Force Blue, was banking toward the southwestern edge of the city, toward the concrete fortress of Fuerte Tiuna. The target was a Russian-designed bunker known as the Rock, a labyrinth of reinforced concrete buried deep beneath the military city. At 11:35 p.m., SEAL Team 6 operators fast-roped from helicopters onto the bunker's roof. While snipers neutralized guard towers, the assault team bypassed the heavily defended main entrances. They used explosive frame charges to blow the hinges off the primary elevator shaft and rappelled directly into the belly of the beast. Moving in a high-low formation through the smoke of flashbang grenades, the teams navigated the sublevels using quad-eye night vision that turned the pitch-black corridors into a clear, ghostly green. At 11:47 p.m., the team reached the third sublevel. A final thermal charge shattered the door to the bunker's war room. Inside, caught in the glare of tactical lights, were Nicolas Maduro and Cilia Flores. Within seconds, Maduro was in zip-tie restraints. He was no longer a president, he was a package. By 11:54 p.m., the call jackpot echoed through the encrypted satellite links all the way back to Mar-a-Lago. The team loaded the detainees and lifted off toward the coast at maximum speed. As the sun began to peak over the Caribbean, the helicopters touched down on the deck of the USS Gerald R. Ford, which was operating in international waters off the coast. In just over an hour, the geopolitical map of South America had been redrawn without a single conventional bomb being dropped. The capture of Nicolas Maduro wasn't a sudden impulse. It was the climax of a 10-year geopolitical war. To understand why the lights went out in Caracas, you have to look at the timeline of a rivalry that turned personal. The friction began during Donald Trump's first term. In 2017, Washington labeled Maduro a dictator and began a maximum pressure campaign. They hammered the Venezuelan economy with sanctions, targeting their state-owned oil giant. By 2019, the U.S. officially recognized an opposition leader as the rightful president, but Maduro held on to power with military support.
Reconocemos como legítimo presidente de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela nuestro comandante en jefe al ciudadano Nicolás Maduro Moros.
For years, the conflict remained a stalemate of frozen assets and heated rhetoric. The situation reached a boiling point during the 2024 Venezuelan elections. Maduro claimed a victory that much of the world called a fraud. While the streets of Caracas erupted in protest, Washington shifted from diplomacy to a war footing. By 2025, the U.S. government declared that the stolen election was the final straw. They argued that the regime was no longer a government, but a criminal enterprise occupying a nation. Late 2025, the Trump administration issued a blunt 48-hour ultimatum.
The Trump administration gave Maduro a pretty clear ultimatum as potential land operations loom.
Maduro had 2 days to step down or face a surgical removal. Confident in his Russian-made missile defenses and his alliance with the East, he bet that the U.S. was bluffing. He was wrong. But beneath the talk of restoring democracy lay the world's largest oil reserves. Venezuela's infrastructure had crumbled under Maduro's management, leaving billions of barrels of oil trapped in the ground. The U.S. strategy was clear. By removing Maduro, they could hand the keys of the Orinoco Belt back to Western corporations. Hours after the capture, plans were already in motion for U.S. oil giants to flood the country with investment, securing a cheap Western-controlled energy supply for the next decade. Over the last decade, Venezuela transformed into a strategic outpost for America's greatest rivals. As Western sanctions tightened, Maduro turned to Moscow and Beijing for a lifeline, trading the country's vast oil future for immediate survival. China poured in tens of billions in loans for oil deals, while Russia provided the iron, supplying advanced missile systems, fighter jets, and even Wagner Group mercenaries to insulate the regime from internal and external threats. For the United States, this wasn't just a political disagreement, it was a breach of the Monroe Doctrine. Having a Russian-armed, Chinese-funded fortress sitting on the world's largest oil reserves was a strategic nightmare that Washington decided could no longer be tolerated. This is, to paraphrase Winston Churchill, not the beginning of the end, but the end of the beginning. Venezuela will go into a long transition with even greater U.S. involvement in shaping the government to come. Donald Trump says that Venezuela's governance will remain in the hands of senior U.S. officials until a proper and judicious transition can take place. The rest of the region is on notice. Maduro is being tried in federal court in Manhattan, specifically the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York. He's being charged with narco-terrorism conspiracy, with prosecutors alleging he led a cartel that used cocaine as a weapon against the United States. His charges include cocaine importation conspiracy and illegal weapons possession. Both he and his wife are also accused of overseeing money laundering networks that sustained the regime's power. Nicolas Maduro may never see the light of day again. Join the fight today in the ultimate free online PvP strategy game set in modern global warfare. Click the link in the description and claim an exclusive $40 starter pack for free, only available for the next 30 days. Subscribe and we'll see you on the next one.